InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcasts. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few public company announcements from Green Thumb Industries Incorporated, trading on the CSE as GTII and the OTCQX as GTBIF. Maple Leaf Green World Incorporated, trading on the NEO as MGW and the OTCQB as MGWFF. CURA Leaf Holdings Incorporated, trading on the CSE as CURA and the OTCQX as CURLF, as well as AMRS Incorporated, trading on the NASDAQ as AMRS. First, looking at Green Thumb Industries Incorporated, a leading national cannabis consumer packaged goods company and owner of Rise and Essence retail stores, who announced today that the company has partnered with Last Prisoner Project on an integrated marketing campaign, including a short documentary, social media advocacy, and digital promotions and in-store programs to raise awareness and funds for LPP's important work. Now, LPP is a coalition of cannabis industry leaders, executives, and artists dedicated to bringing restorative justice to the cannabis industry. The organization's clemency and reentry initiatives provide pro bono post-conviction representation to assist individuals in securing release and a clean slate to rebuild their lives. The centerpiece of the campaign is a short documentary, Waiting to Breathe, which I have included the link attached in the article, or you can look it up on YouTube right now, which was created in-house by Green Thumb. And the film highlights the story of Evelyn LaChapelle, a current LPP advisor who served more than 5 years in prison for a cannabis-related offense and has since rebuilt her life with her young daughter with support from the LPP. Now, following her release, LaChapelle was fired from a job that the company learned about her past. And when I got fired, it was like you weren't done serving your sentence, said LaChapelle, who currently works in the legal cannabis industry in California. It was like this was never going to go away, and it leaves you with an amount of hopelessness. Now, Sarah Gerstein, the executive director and general counsel of LPP, said, Evelyn's story really moved us all and changed the way we envision this product and our mission. All of the barriers she faced coming out of prison, how difficult it was for her to find employment, watching her struggle through all of that really gave us the insight to refocus our efforts, not just on releasing folks from incarceration, but working on them to ensure that they have resources when they need to successfully re-enter. Now, according to various sources, an estimated 40,000 people are currently incarcerated for victimless cannabis offenses. 92% of 666,000 cannabis arrests in 2018 were for possession alone. And black people are 3.64 more times likely than white people to be arrested for cannabis possession. You can see the sources attached in the article. And so a portion of the proceeds from Green Thumb products purchased in the month of September will be directly going to LPP. And Green Thumb Corporate Responsibility Director Michael Fields said, by partnering with LPP, Green Thumb hopes to raise awareness of real people like Evelyn, whose lives and families have been positively impacted by LPP, and to provide financial support for LPP, which serves as a vital resource for former cannabis inmates transitioning to a successful life following incarceration. So Green Thumb Industries, they're obviously working with the Last Prisoner Project to try to raise awareness and funds as well. You've seen a lot of companies do this in the past. I do think that particular program, the Last Prisoner Project, is significantly important for the cannabis industry, especially in the U.S., as so many people have been incarcerated for non-violent drug-related crimes, especially cannabis crimes. And that still is an ongoing issue, whether you're dealing with that in Canada or the U.S. Obviously, most advocates for the industry are still trying to have many people have reduced sentences or early releases for these non-violent crimes, as well as, again, assisting with their re-entry into society, which is definitely a great thing that the Last Prisoner Project is doing. If you haven't checked out the documentary, Waiting to Breathe, I highly recommend it. A very, very short but impactful watch, discussing some of the issues that still face sort of the backlash of the industry today. And obviously, not only has Green Thumb Industries or Green Thumb Corporations worked on this, but other companies in the past have been doing projects like this with different advocacy groups to try and, again, aid people who've been incarcerated or aid people getting back to work once released from incarceration. And I do think that, part of this is one element will be the PR stunt, but the other part is actually quite socially responsible, and I would hope that more companies do more advocacy work like this, as it still is a massive issue facing sort of how people view cannabis today. Next, looking at Maple Leaf Green World Incorporated, who provide the following update for its California CBG hemp project. Now, a sample from the selective batch of La Creme from the first 2 greenhouses, which is 2 to 4 weeks from full maturity, has been submitted for lab analysis, and the results indicate an incredible 13.9% CBG or 0.07% THC and no other cannabinoids detected. Now, it was noteworthy that most samples would present traces of other cannabinoids as enzymes break down CBGA and produce other cannabinoids. Now, the lack of these other cannabinoids indicates a pure CBG flower. Now, the plants have kept longer in the vegetative state deliberately to help develop larger buds and higher poundage, and the low THC nature of the La Creme strain has allowed the company to make adjustments during the vegetative phase to maximize both CBG concentration and yield. And these plants will be ready for harvesting in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Now, the outdoor crop is also displaying numerous large buds and is estimated to produce 2 to 3 pounds of flower per plant. And the company's cultivation team is excited with the early results and is confident that the flowers, when fully mature, will achieve a minimum of 18% CBG. And as the company prepares for its first harvest, clones have also been cut and set up for the second harvest. I'm very impressed with the purity of our harvest, and the low THC nature of this strain gave us the flexibility to extend the length of our vegetating stage to obtain higher CBG content and larger buds without the risk of our harvest going hot. This will be resulted in approximately 30 to 40% increase in yield, and we're excited to see the final results from a fully mature flower, said Raymond Lay, the chairman and president and CEO of Maple Leaf Green World. So CBG, I've talked about this a bunch. It's not only just Maple Leaf Green World, but tons of companies looking at this. Most of them doing it through synthetic avenues. You're seeing a lot of companies focus on creating different CBG isolates. I don't think, obviously, similar to CBD, there's still going to be a huge demand for the isolate world. I do think you're going to have demand for, obviously, more full spectrum, more naturally grown CBG products, as Maple Leaf Green World has produced here. But again, the CBG stage still very early. I don't think you're going to see a lot of consumer feedback or demand for this quite that fast, as well as the sort of products and offerings that are going to be available. I think that's going to take some time, but it is interesting to see that you're seeing more and more companies focus on these other minor cannabinoids besides THC and CBD. And I think you're going to continue to see that over the next coming months. Whether those actually yield any viable products and consumers are actually looking specifically for any CBG or other microcannabinoid related products will be sort of up for debate. It'll also depend on what the overall efficacy of these products can be. There are some uses of CBG, but again, it does have to have those high enough doses. So it is good to see that some companies are able to reach those stages of 18% CBG. But again, I don't know if that end result product is going to be something that people are really looking for or know about that much in the market so far. Next, looking at Curaleaf Holdings, who announced that its line of Select Elite Live cartridges has reached $1 million in sales since launching in Florida medical market on August 6. Now, Select Elite Live features high-quality, high-potency oil with a wide variety of strain-specific flavors and effects, and Curaleaf will unveil additional Select product offerings to Florida's medical patients later this year. We're thrilled to have received such a positive response to Elite Live from our Florida patients and look forward to continuing to provide innovative new products for their cannabis needs, said Joe Bayham, the president of Curaleaf. Now, the immediate success of Elite Live in Florida speaks to the power of the Select brand, and we're confident about our continued growth in the state. Now, Select, known as America's #1 cannabis oil brand, has been on a path of rapid expansion since it was acquired by Curaleaf in February of 2020. And Select products are now available in over 950 independent dispensaries across 12 states, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Maryland, Michigan, Nevada, Oklahoma, Oregon, Massachusetts, and Maine. And the Select brand will continue to expand across the U.S. with its launch of Ohio's medical market later this month. Now, Curaleaf also announced the company's first retail location in Utah with a new pharmacy at Thanksgiving Way in Leahy, marking its 90th retail location nationwide. Now, Curaleaf Utah was awarded one of the state's 14 licenses in the state of Utah in 2019, and Leahy is known as one of the state's highest growth cities, and its surrounding area is home to more than 50% of the state's total qualifying patients. Utah County has 44% of the certified 10,400 patients. Now, the new Leahy location is strategically located directly off of I-15, the state's most highly trafficked freeway, in a high retail density area, which will provide optimal patient access from anywhere in the Utah County area. And Curaleaf will be the first cannabis pharmacy location in the county heading south from Salt Lake on I-15. Now, the company's expansion into Utah will provide more flexibility to high-quality medical cannabis products, innovative consumption formats, and leading national brands. And Curaleaf is also completing construction of the state-of-the-art processing operation in North Salt Lake City, which is scheduled to open in mid-September. We're looking forward to introducing our Select and Curaleaf formulas to the patients of Utah with our new Leahy location, said Joe Bayham, the president of Curaleaf. We anticipate that demand will quickly surpass projected numbers in this market as cannabis use continues to gain acceptance in a wide variety of health and wellness needs. So Curaleaf obviously doing quite well in Florida, obviously doing really well with their Select brands. The Florida market, as far as most new product innovations and releases goes, tends to be a pretty safe market for product releases as there is really high demand and not a lot of product offerings within that medical community. So we've seen this with other companies, not just Curaleaf, but I would expect them to continue to have pretty aggressive sales within the Florida market, especially for next generation products like distillate vapes. Also now expanding into the Utah market, Curaleaf obviously has a pretty large footprint as a MSO in the U.S. right now, and I do think that they're going to continue to expand there. Obviously, moving into smart markets like Utah, which is still very, very nascent, but lots of room for growth. And we've seen this with every state as their market comes online. As much as there is some skepticism about how much demand there's going to be, every single time you've seen the demand far outweigh the supply with the initial sales, and that those initial sort of onloading of dispensaries and pharmacies and everything is usually quite an aggressive couple of weeks to months for a lot of people who are now having access to this medical or recreational cannabis products. So I would expect that their Utah sales and retail stores will do quite well. Again, as there's not until that market really develops and builds out, which is probably about a year or two away, you're going to see them probably have a pretty good competitive advantage within that space. And lastly, today, looking at AMRS, who today announced it successfully scaled up the commercial production of CBG, leveraging its industrial fermentation process capability. Now, AMRS expects to deliver about 1 ton of high-quality CBG through fermentation as an alternative to their traditional production method of extraction from the cannabis sativa L plant. Now, first commercial revenue for the sale of this molecule is anticipated this year as an ingredient in applications that are excluded from AMRS's current collaboration agreements. Now, product margins are anticipated to operate above the current industry average realized by existing publicly traded CBD suppliers. CBG is the precursor from which all other cannabinoids are synthesized and often referred to as the stem cell of cannabinoids. CBG is a non-psychoactive cannabinoid and presents significant therapeutic potential, making it a subject of great interest for researchers and consumers alike. And AMRS's fermentation process is well positioned to result in the low-cost CBG with higher purity, no THC, which is expected to unlock CBD's adoption. Now, early testing on skin modules demonstrates advanced performance of CBG for various topical indications over CBD. Furthermore, the combination of CBG with AMRS's sugarcane-based seculin provides some of the highest efficacy results for topical applications, and early studies indicate that CBG has the potential to deliver better efficacy than CBD in about 1/3 of current CBD topical applications. AMRS's biotechnology platform continues to demonstrate its capability to engineer yeast to create and produce differentiated high-value products. Now, this molecule was developed from the initial target to full-scale production in less than 9 months, said Eduardo Alvarez, the chief operating officer. So, as I was talking earlier, there's obviously sort of the 2 different branches of CBD production right now. Obviously, AMRS focusing on the yeast cultivation formulation. You're seeing more and more companies focus on, again, some sort of synthesized or yeast production of CBG, as discussed above when we were talking about Maple Leaf Green World, that the growing of CBG high-density plants is still quite difficult. And again, the yield of that is going to be debatable. So, I mean, as much as there are companies obviously working on that, there's still going to be a demand for your naturally grown CBG. I do think that in general, some of those microcannabinoids, similar to what we've seen with CBD, are going to have more of an isolate and synthesized market, as opposed to lots of people just growing tons of it. I do think that to get the scale of production you're going to need, especially when you're making topical products, it's going to be difficult to be able to grow that amount of high, rich CBD product. So I do think that having both options is going to be the smart play for any of these companies, and I do think that it'll, similar to CBD, you will see both exist at the same time. One's not going to dominate the other. It is interesting to note that they're finding that CBG has more potential than CBD for certain applications. That'll be interesting to see over the next year if CBG starts to become a big competitor for CBD-based products, or if you see a transition towards CBG away from CBD. Obviously, we've seen this type of thing happen in the pharmaceutical world many times before, with certain products being basically proved obsolete by the next generation. I don't think this is going to quite happen for CBG, as most people are finding lots of anti-inflammatory benefits of CBD, and there are other sort of microcannabinoid benefits of CBD as well that sort of put it ahead of CBG. But again, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next year, and also what other microcannabinoids start to jump into the isolate field as well. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.